The manor of Willow Creek was a mausoleum of memory, its grand halls echoing with a silence that had weight and texture. For Eleanor Blackwood, the young widow of the renowned and reclusive artist Arthur Blackwood, every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of the wind through the willows, was a reminder of the life that had been so abruptly extinguished. Arthur was gone, claimed by a sudden fever that had burned through him with a terrifying swiftness, leaving behind only his canvases, his paints, and a void in Eleanor's heart that felt as vast and cold as the North Sea. Their final months had been a slow, painful estrangement. The vibrant, passionate man she had married had retreated into a shell of quiet anxiety, his brilliant mind consumed by a project he refused to name. He would spend days locked in his north-facing studio, emerging pale and distant, his fingers often stained not with the vibrant pigments of his trade, but with a strange, metallic-smelling gray substance. When she had asked, he had brushed her off with a tired smile that never reached his eyes. "It is nothing, my love, just a new technique, a folly." His death had felt less like an end, and more like the final, inexplicable act of that withdrawal. On a rain-lashed afternoon, a month after the funeral, his solicitor had arrived with the final items from the studio. Among the half-finished landscapes and dusty brushes was one completed piece, wrapped in coarse linen. "He was working on this until the very end, Mrs. Blackwood," the solicitor said, his voice a somber drone. "He insisted it was for you." Alone once more, Eleanor unwrapped the painting with trembling hands. It was a portrait of their home, Willow Creek Manor, but not as it was. Arthur had painted it bathed in an unearthly twilight, the familiar red brick facade rendered in deep melancholic blues and purples. The windows were dark, vacant eyes except for one, their bedroom window. There he had painted a single, faint, golden light, a tiny, hopeful beacon in the oppressive gloom. In the foreground, the willow trees for which the estate was named swayed like grieving specters. It was breathtakingly beautiful, a masterpiece of sorrow. Yet, as Eleanor gazed upon it, a cold finger of unease traced its way down her spine. There was an intent in this painting that felt less like a farewell and more like a message. The composition was too perfect, the symbolism too stark. It was not a painting of a home, but of a fortress. And in the lower right corner, where Arthur always signed his name with a flourish of vermilion, the signature was a messy, hurried scrawl, as if painted by a hand shaking not with passion, but with fear. The painting, which she titled Twilight at Willow Creek, found a place of honor above the mantel in the grand library. Eleanor would sit for hours in the worn velvet armchair, losing herself in its melancholy beauty, trying to feel some connection to the man who had painted it. It was during one of these vigils, as the setting sun cast long, skeletal shadows across the room, that she noticed the first imperfection. A patch of the painting near the base of the largest willow tree seemed different. While the rest of the canvas was a symphony of smooth, glazed oils, this area was rough, textured. From a distance, it blended perfectly, mimicking the gnarled bark of the tree. But up close, it felt granular, almost like sand had been mixed into the paint. A memory surfaced, sharp and clear, Arthur gently chiding her for touching a wet canvas years ago. "The texture tells the story as much as the color, my dear," he had said. "Every stroke must be intentional." This texture was not intentional. It was a flaw, a secret. Her heart began a slow, heavy drum against her ribs. She fetched a magnifying glass from Arthur's old desk, its brass handle cold in her grasp. Kneeling before the painting, she brought the glass close to the anomalous patch. Beneath the top layers of umber and gray, she could see it, not the rich, earthy tones of his usual palette, but something duller, flecked with minute, reflective particles. And there, a scent, faint but unmistakable, rose from the canvas. It was the same metallic smell that had clung to his fingers in those final weeks, cutting through the familiar odors of linseed oil and turpentine. This was not just paint. This was a deliberate concealment. Arthur, the master of his craft, had hidden something within his own masterpiece. The cold finger of unease became a firm, gripping hand around her heart. The painting was no longer an elegy. It was a crime scene. The discovery consumed her. For days, Eleanor became an archaeologist of her own life, carefully probing the canvas. She tried gentle heat from a candle held at a safe distance. She tried viewing it from every angle under lamplight. Nothing. The secret remained stubbornly locked within Arthur's grim palette. Frustration mounted, a hot, desperate tears pricking at her eyes. In a moment of anguish, her hand slipped from the mantel, and her fingernail, sharp and desperate, scraped across the textured patch. A sliver of the gray paint flaked away. Eleanor froze, her breath catching in her throat. Beneath the gray was not the white of the primed canvas, but a stark, shocking slash of crimson, vermilion, the color of his signature. With a trembling, reverent hand, she took a fine-pointed etching tool from Arthur's old kit. Holding her breath, she began to carefully, meticulously scrape away the granular gray paint. It came away in tiny, metallic-smelling curls, revealing not more of the painting but words. A message, written in Arthur's bold, cursive hand, in the vibrant, bloody red he had loved so well. My dearest Eleanor, if you are reading this, my fears were justified. I am not the victim of a fever but of a viper in our midst. My research into the gray powder was not a folly but a fatal discovery. It is a poison, slow and untraceable, developed for Lord Croft's ambitions. He knows I uncovered his plot. Trust no one. The proof is buried with my first love, the sea. Find the ledger. The future of the crown may depend on it. Forgive me. The world tilted on its axis. The room swam, the shelves of books blurring into a vortex of brown and gold. Arthur had not died. He had been murdered, poisoned. The gray powder was the substance on his hands, the substance he had used to hide this desperate message. Lord Croft, their charming, powerful neighbor, a pillar of the community, was a traitor and a killer. The painting, once a source of sorrowful comfort, now seemed to scream from the wall. The dark windows were not just empty, they were watching. The weeping willows were not grieving, they were hiding a monster. Arthur's final gift was not a painting. It was a warning from beyond the grave. A paralyzing fear threatened to swallow Eleanor whole. To accuse a man of Lord Croft's stature without irrefutable proof would be social and physical suicide. Arthur's message was a start, but it was a ghost's testimony. She needed evidence. Retreating to the solitude of the library, she lit a single lamp, its pool of light a small bastion against the encroaching dark. Arthur had spoken of a ledger. He had mentioned his research being for Lord Croft's ambitions, and he had said the proof was buried with my first love, the sea. Arthur's first love had not been a woman, it had been sailing. In his youth, before his art consumed him, he had been an avid sailor, exploring every cove and inlet along the rugged coast. His favorite spot, the place he had always spoken of with a poet's soul, was a secluded, rocky bay called Selkie's Cove. But a cove was a large place. She needed a precise location. She remembered something else. In his later years, Arthur had embraced modernity, maintaining a digital archive of his sketches and notes. He had teased her for her preference for pen and paper. "The future is in the cloud, my dear," he'd say with a wink. Eleanor booted up his old, dusty computer, her heart hammering. She navigated to his cloud storage, protected by a password she knew by heart, the date of their wedding. The files were a chaotic mix of scanned sketches, half-written essays, and photographic references. She searched for Selkie's Cove, gray powder, Croft. Nothing. Then she remembered his hint, the future of the crown. It seemed melodramatic, but Arthur was an artist, a man of symbols. On a whim, she searched for sovereign. A single, encrypted folder appeared. The password hint was another personal joke, where we first met. Her mind flew back to a sun-drenched gallery, a young artist nervously standing before his first major piece. She typed, "The Gilded Swan." The folder unlocked. Inside were not paintings but documents. Scanned pages from a laboratory journal, detailing the development of a metallic particulate toxin, soluble in liquid, inducing cardiac arrest with symptoms mimicking typhoid. The author was a chemist named Dr. Albright, but the notes were annotated in Lord Croft's distinctive slashing hand, with comments like "increase potency" and "ensure deniability." And there, nestled among the digital files, was a scanned map of Selkie's Cove, with a specific deep-water trench marked not with an X, but with a small, painted crown. The ledger, a physical record of payments and conspirators, was weighted down and hidden there. Arthur had not just left her a message, he had left her a map. The following night was moonless, the sky a blanket of black velvet pierced by indifferent stars. Dressed in dark, practical clothing, Eleanor guided Arthur's small skiff across the inky water of Selkie's Cove, the only sounds the dip of the oars and the frantic beating of her own heart. The air was cold and salt-laced, and every shadow on the cliff seemed to hold a lurking threat. Using the coordinates from the digital map, she dropped a weighted grappling hook into the trench. For agonizing minutes, it found nothing but mud and rock. Then, it caught. With strength born of sheer desperation, she hauled up a heavy, oilskin-wrapped package. Back in the safety of the boathouse, her fingers numb with cold and fear, she unwrapped it. It was the ledger. Page after page of coded entries, shipments of gray powder to foreign agents and payments from shadowy sources. But the most damning evidence was a series of letters, in Lord Croft's own hand, outlining a plot to destabilize the government by assassinating key figures with an untraceable poison. Arthur had stumbled upon this, and for his curiosity, he had been murdered. She held in her hands not just proof of her husband's murder, but evidence of high treason. The weight of it was crushing. She could take this to the authorities, but Lord Croft's influence was vast. He had friends in the constabulary, in the halls of power. He would have her declared a hysterical widow, discredit her, and make her disappear, just as he had Arthur. Or she could hide the ledger, flee Willow Creek, and try to forget, living the rest of her life in the shadow of a terrible, unavenged truth. She looked down at the ledger, at Arthur's frantic, crimson message scrawled on a piece of canvas. He had not chosen the easy path. He had chosen to speak the truth, even with his dying breath. A steely resolve, cold and sharp, settled within her. She would not let his sacrifice be in vain, but she would not play the game by Lord Croft's rules. She would not walk into the lion's den waving the evidence. Carefully, she separated a single, incriminating page from the ledger, a receipt for a shipment of the gray powder, signed by Croft himself. The rest, she rewrapped in oilskin and hid in a new, more secure location known only to her. The next morning, a plain, unmarked package containing that single page was delivered to the home of Sir Edmund Hayes, the one man in the county known for his unbending integrity and his direct line to the Queen's intelligence service. The package contained no return address, no explanation, just the damning proof. Eleanor stood once more before twilight at Willow Creek. The single, golden light in the dark manor no longer looked hopeful. It looked like a signal fire, a declaration of war. She was no longer the grieving widow in a silent mausoleum. She was the keeper of a dark secret, the guardian of a dangerous truth. Lord Croft would soon know that his viper's nest had been discovered. The game was afoot, and Eleanor, armed with her husband's love and his final, desperate clue, was ready to play. Weeks passed like a slow-moving fog after Eleanor dispatched her dangerous package to Sir Edmund Hayes. Each day stretched before her, taut as a bowstring, every sound from the driveway, the crunch of carriage wheels, the clatter of hooves, sending a fresh jolt of adrenaline through her veins. The grand manor, once a mausoleum of memory, had transformed into a gilded cage of waiting. She took to drawing the heavy velvet curtains in the library, the painting Twilight at Willow Creek, now watching over a room perpetually bathed in a dim, amber gloom. She was the spider at the center of a web she could not fully see, feeling for the tremors of an approaching storm. She saw Lord Croft only once at a distance, riding his black stallion along the boundary of their estates. He tipped his hat, his smile a flash of white in his handsome, cruel face, a perfect pantomime of neighborly concern. But Eleanor, her senses heightened by fear and grief, saw the calculation in his eyes, the cold assessment. The viper was aware that his nest had been disturbed, even if he did not yet know by whom. The response, when it came, was not from Sir Edmund, but from his wife, Lady Beatrice Hayes. An invitation, elegantly scripted on heavy cream cardstock, for an afternoon tea. It was not a summons, but it was a command nonetheless. The following day, Eleanor's carriage rolled through the imposing iron gates of Hayes Manor, a structure even older and more formidable than Willow Creek. She was shown into a sunlit conservatory overflowing with orchids and the gentle trickle of a fountain. Lady Beatrice, a woman with eyes the color of flint and a spine of Sheffield steel, dismissed the servants with a wave of her hand. "The air in the county has grown thick of late, my dear Mrs. Blackwood," she began, pouring tea with unnerving steadiness. "My husband received a most peculiar document. It prompted him to take a sudden, urgent trip to London." She fixed her gaze on Eleanor. "He asked me to ensure you understood the gravity of the situation. The man you suspect is not merely a landowner. He is a man with friends in very dark places. There are inquiries being made, but they must be made with the utmost discretion. A misstep could see evidence vanish and witnesses silenced." Eleanor's teacup rattled in its saucer. This was it. The game was truly afoot. "I understand, Lady Beatrice. Please assure Sir Edmund that my discretion is absolute." She met the older woman's gaze, allowing a sliver of her own steel to show. "And so is my resolve." A flicker of respect crossed Lady Beatrice's face. "Good. Then you must also understand that you are no longer safe at Willow Creek. You have lit a fuse. It is only a matter of time before it reaches the powder keg. That night back in her library, Eleanor felt the walls closing in. Lady Beatrice was right. Lord Croft would not wait to be cornered. He would strike preemptively. To burn the evidence, he would have to burn the keeper of the evidence. Her eyes drifted to Arthur's painting. The dark windows now seemed not just watchful, but predatory. The hidden message felt less like a secret and more like a target painted on her back. A new plan, desperate and audacious, began to form in her mind. She could not wait for Sir Edmund's slow political machinations. She had to force Croft's hand, to make him reveal himself in the open. She needed to dangle the bait. The following morning, she instructed her most trusted maid to spread a carefully crafted piece of gossip in the village. That Mrs. Blackwood, in her grief, had found solace in sorting through her late husband's nautical charts, and was planning a sentimental voyage to his favorite cove, Selkie's Cove, to scatter his remaining personal effects at sea. It was a risk of monumental proportions. She was announcing the location of the hidden ledger to the very man who sought it, but she was counting on his arrogance, his belief that a mere woman was no match for his cunning. She was counting on him to come for it himself. 2 days later, under the cover of a blustery, gray afternoon, Eleanor set her plan in motion. She took the skiff out to Selkie's Cove once more, but this time, the oilskin package she carried contained not the ledger, but a weighted bundle of old ledgers from the estate's farm accounts. The real ledger remained hidden in the one place Croft would never think to look, beneath the loose floorboard under her own bed, the place where Arthur had once hidden her birthday gifts. She rode to the center of the cove, her movements slow and deliberate, playing the part of the grieving widow. She made a show of opening the package and holding it over the water. She waited, her every nerve ending screaming, the wind whipping her hair into a frenzy. She did not have to wait long. A second boat, larger and powered by a quiet engine, emerged from a hidden inlet, cutting through the choppy water with grim purpose. At its helm stood Lord Croft, his face a mask of cold fury, stripped of all its aristocratic charm. 2 brutish men flanked him. "Mrs. Blackwood," he called out, his voice carrying easily over the wind. "I believe you have something that belongs to me. A simple misunderstanding, I'm sure. Hand it over and we can avoid any unpleasantness." Eleanor's heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. She held the decoy package aloft. "You mean this, Lord Croft, the proof of how you murdered my husband?" His smile was a ghastly thing. A tragic accident, but yes, that. The fanciful scribblings of a dying, delirious man. "And if I refuse?" "Then you will share his fate, a tragic boating accident, so common in these treacherous waters." He was closer now, close enough for her to see the murderous intent in his eyes. This was the moment. She had lured him into the open, but she had no escape. Her plan had ended here, at the precipice of her own death. Just as Croft's boat drew alongside hers, a new sound cut through the wind, the powerful, rhythmic thrum of a naval cutter, its hull painted a forbidding gray. It rounded the headland with startling speed, the Union Jack snapping crisply at its mast. Armed Marines lined its deck, and standing at the prow, his face grim and satisfied, was Sir Edmund Hayes. Lord Croft froze, his arrogance shattering into pieces of pure panic. He was caught, not by hysterical whispers or anonymous packages, but by his own actions, witnessed by the highest authority. As the Marines swiftly took Croft and his men into custody, Sir Edmund helped a trembling Eleanor onto the deck of the cutter. "A brave but recklessly dangerous gambit, Mrs. Blackwood," he said, his voice low. "Your message provided the what. Your little performance today provided the who and the when. We have him now, completely." Eleanor looked back at Croft, a broken man in handcuffs, then towards the receding shoreline of Selkie's Cove. The Viper had been taken from his nest, the storm had broken, and as the cutter powered towards London, towards justice, Eleanor felt not triumph but a profound, weary peace. She had solved Arthur's puzzle. She had honored his final, desperate wish. The dark secret was secret no more, and the future, for the first time since his death, held a sliver of light.